So what I wanted to do is talk to you about bad days today, and how to deal with bad days without alcohol. And what I have here is my notes that are now on my phone just on the side, so I will refer to those. So the first thing I want to say is that everybody has bad days, right? Bad days are normal. I often think that as drinkers, we used to use bad days as an excuse to just drink, when actually what we were going through is a normal part of everybody's life. And what we probably did in some ways, and actually people who don't drink do this as well, is that we are sold this idea that life's all meant to be giddy and happy every moment of every day, and we should all be being swung around in the arms of somebody lovely, being able to wear white jeans and a white shirt without spilling anything down it, with perfect teeth and a perfect smile and a slightly giddy laugh, and that's how life should be every moment of every day. And actually that's not true. Most days are just okay, but I suspect that most of the days when things were just okay, we made them into days that had a little bit of drama or a little bit of trauma about them, or a bit stressful or a bit down, as an excuse to drink. And so what I want to do today is to try and get you to rethink about what your days are, what a bad day really is, and how we might then go about dealing with those days. And the first thing to do is to say, you know what? Not every day is a bowl of cherries. It's not all amazing. There are okay days. There are stressful days. There are days where we might have some big emotional peak, and they're really bad days. But all days are not the same. And everybody, whether you drink or you don't drink, whether you're the richest person in the world or the poorest person in the world, whether you are a size 8 or a size 20, we all have bad days and we all have to deal with them. And lots of people manage to deal with them without drinking. And the people who deal with them the best are the people that have recognised that these sort of days exist. And if you want to change the way you feel about those days and the impact those days have on your life, then it's up to you to make the changes that are necessary to make your life feel happier and calmer and less traumatic and less stressful. And really that does come back down to a really basic principle, which is you do have control about the way that you feel. You do have control about the way that you react to situations. Not 100% all the time, but you can change a lot of the way that you deal with things, deal with days, react to other people. And so you can begin to tip the balance the other way, so that maybe if you have had an emotional spat with someone, it doesn't then last maybe a whole weekend. Not that I've just done that recently at all. Just had, feeling a bit miserable with someone, and so made my moroseness and wallowed in it all over the weekend. It doesn't have to last that long. You are in control of how you feel and how you respond to a situation. But how do you go about doing that when actually alcohol has been a really big part of your life, and alcohol has been a really big part of how you respond to bad days? Well, first of all, let's just say that I do believe that as drinkers, as people that have drunk, that we were never able to see the shades of grey between a day where we might just have had our head down and worked really hard, and therefore, a bit like for me today, I've worked really hard all day and I feel like I've just come up for air, and that's a bit hard to do on a day that's as hot as today. But I feel like it's been slightly stressful but slightly in a tunnel. And actually, in reaction to that sort of day before, I would have had a drink. But I could have also had an argument with someone today, and I would have used that as an excuse to drink. So actually, as a drinker, my days all just became quite homogenous. They were homogenous days in which I would find some reason to drink, whether it was that I had worked really hard and therefore I was stressed and feeling tired, or whether I was feeling emotionally sad. And actually that's quite damaging if you think about it, because what I've never managed to do is to work out that there are different ways to deal with different types of bad day, that some days aren't bad at all, they were just excuses for me to have a drink, and that I've never built that reserve of skills that allow me to emotionally cope with feel really, really deep-seated feelings of despair or sadness or anger, because I used to drink them all away as quickly as possible. And actually, I feel like I've got a lot of catching up to do in the emotional literacy landscape in terms of being in touch with my emotions and being able to make sure that a bad day doesn't last a week or a weekend. A bad day lasts 10 minutes and I manage to help myself move on from that, or I repair an argument quickly rather than dwell on it. I feel I've still got a long way to go, and that's me saying that as 5 years sober. But I do believe that's because basically I treated every single day as just a lump of excuses to drink. And you would have done it yourself. You would have said, oh, I've had a hard day, I deserve to drink, or I'm feeling emotional, I need to take something to take the edge off. It's just all too much, I need to be able to blank it out. Fuck it, everybody. Those are all just excuses. Those are all just actually really, really bad excuses to not deal, A, with the emotion, and B, to indulge and excuse your drinking, so that all you're doing is putting off dealing with that emotion or that bad day to another day, and you're making it worse by just drinking, by making yourself feel tired and angry and grumpy, and probably actually reacting to some situations under the influence of alcohol rather than under the influence of reason. So it's possible that over time we've damaged some relationships, we've devalued friendships, we've not dealt well with situations at work, and that's made things more difficult for us. So we've got a lot of catching up to do. We've got a lot of hard wiring to also unpick. And because if we've only ever dealt with bad days through drinking, then our default, we're like Pavlov's dogs, our default is drink, drink, drink every time. And fighting that and getting rid of that as the dominant hard wiring whenever anything goes wrong takes time. And that's sort of why I often say to people, definitely take a month off drinking, even if you're looking to moderate in the longer term, because it means you would have dealt with some emotional situations, probably that patchwork of emotional situations over the period of that month. You'll begin to understand a little bit more about how you use alcohol on a regular basis. It's not just about the fact that you've got in the habit of opening a bottle of wine. You would have got in the habit of using a busy day at work as an excuse for a bottle of wine, or a stressful day for work to have a bottle of wine, or an argument to have a bottle of wine. So it's not just the action of taking something out of the fridge. It's the excuses that you give yourself for justifying that, because deep down we all know that what we're doing isn't quite right. And so you've got to unpick all those excuses that you've built. And the first way to do that is to accept that bad days are normal. So I said this at the beginning and I'll say it again. Life is about a load of days that are just okay, and some days that are really happy amongst it, and some days that are also a bit shit. But that is normal. It's possible and it's desirable to manage all of those types of days without drinking. And other people manage to do it in life, and you can too. You can do it without numbing yourself with alcohol. It is normal to deal with your emotions. It's normal to have a bad day and not respond by drinking. So every time you feel that, spring crawling urge because you feel you need a treat, you feel you need a reward, you feel you need some comfort, you feel you need to block out something, just remember that that's an abnormal bit of behaviour that you have developed over the years. And what you need to now do is develop the normal pattern of behaviour, which is to write, how am I going to deal with this situation? You need to retrain your brain. And so, like I said, it took me, several years before I really worked out that that for me to not automatically want to go for a drink when I was feeling anxious or tired or hungry or angry. And some of those emotions were easy to deal with first. So, I dealt with being thirsty first because my body was naturally asking for me to drink lots of water, and tiredness came quite naturally second. My body was desperately going, drink fluids when I wasn't drinking. So some of those things will happen easier than others, and some you'll need to retrain your brain on. So first of all, let's just think about the pattern of your days. Now, There will be a day that you call a bad day that probably isn't that bad a day. It's just been a busy day, a day where you might not have looked up from your computer screen very often, a day where you feel you haven't got outside and you've got a little bit of cabin fever. Now, the answer to that day is not to have a drink. The answer to that day is to go, shit, I've not been outside all day. You know what? What will help now is if I meet the needs that are most pressing. And those needs might be to drink something. They might be to eat something. They might be to stand up and walk away from your desk and go for a walk around the block. Or it might be the end of the day and you can now go, right, let's shut that computer down. How do I now mark that end of day with something that takes me totally away from this crushing sort of feeling of having not moved for a whole day? You may need to have a little nap. You may need to walk the dog. You may need to put some music on. You may need to change your clothes. They could be as simple as that. But they're all things that involve you changing your mental state. And before we would have picked up some alcohol because that would have been the quickest way to change our mental state. This isn't alcohol, by the way. This is some kombucha. This is my treat for a hard day, having not moved away from my desk. So you may need to do some things that are about making you feel more comfortable. None of those things include alcohol. So yesterday I was being a right stroppy old mare, and I knew that I really, in order to make myself feel different and to not escalate my feelings and be angry with UC, basically, who was in the space with me, I knew I had to get out of this flat because it was really, really hot. I was tired, I was angry, I was feeling miserable, I was feeling in a bit of pain. And so in order to deal with that, not one of those things was about alcohol. I drank some water, I ate some food, I took some painkillers, I actually had a bit of a nap, and then I got up and I left the building that was making me feel claustrophobic and went and changed my environment. I put on some loud tunes, I set myself up at work, and suddenly I felt different. I changed the way I felt about the bad day I was having because I changed my environment. I did some things that I needed to do, but not one of them was about drinking. So it might be that if you've got used to dealing with really heavy days at work and the end of those days, you might need to reconnect with some of those things that make you feel like you're taking a break, that work day has ended and now this is about you. And so think about the things you can do. Do you end up sat in front of the telly with a takeaway in your clothes watching, something that you haven't even planned to? Well, probably. But you can now change all of that by, changing out of your work clothes, getting something nice to eat that you enjoy, planning something that you enjoy to watch rather than just watching whatever happens to be on. Begin to reclaim those things that actually you did once and you'd sort of forgotten because by the time you'd got through your first glass of wine, it really didn't matter if you were sat with holes in your tights on the sofa and watching, I don't know, what's crap telly these days? EastEnders? I don't know. I listen to The Archers when I'm in that sort of mood. The other thing is that you need to also know that even though you might make some of those symbolic breaks with a really stressful day, you will still have that moment of discomfort, that moment of craving because you want to have a drink. So you need to be able to deal with that immediate need as well. So what have you got as a backup plan? What's in the fridge that you can put in your mouth very quickly instead that says, yes, I'm eating something, I'm drinking something, but it's not anything that's going to, blow me out of control and numb me and make me no good for the rest of the evening? Have you got something that you can quickly do that will de-stress that? What have you got that could take 20 minutes to really help you get over that hump of discomfort or surf the urge, as Annie Grace talked about the other week? And it may be that you do 20 minutes of yoga, you walk around the block, you add something new into the routine as well as taking off all your work clothes and getting yourself some nice food. What are the things that you can do that are really quick and mean that you feel that you have done something to distract yourself from that urge? And distraction is really, really important. So that's a way to deal with dealing with days that aren't actually that bad. They're just not brilliant. They're just okay days. You may actually feel that because you've had your head down and you've worked really hard, you've had a quite successful day in some ways and you want to reward yourself. Well, in which case you need to start picking up rewards that aren't about slumping in front of the telly with red wine dribbling down your cheek. You need to think about other things that may be about having a high five for a really good day. And so what could they be? And again, some of those treats may be some of those distractions I talked about earlier. It might be about knowing you've got a nice drink in the fridge. It might be about treating yourself to a dessert that day, unless you're on a diet. It may be about having a bath or a shower. It may be a whole host of things. It may be catching up on an episode of something that you really, really wanted to watch. Either way, your reward is also should never be something that damages you more, something that would make you feel worse in the longer term. Alcohol damages you. It's not a reward. It's not the thing that you should be doing at the end of a hard day. Then, let me just look at my notes. Okay. The other thing about alcohol is, of course, that it would always have stopped you taking positive actions to change the way you feel. And there is nothing more present and obvious for that than the fact that if you have a really emotionally charged day, a really bad day, a bad day because you've had an argument with somebody, for example, then alcohol doesn't make that go away. It just stops you doing anything to make it better. And in fact, it can only actually make it worse by robbing you of the energy you need to deal with the situation. How many times have you had an argument with somebody when you maybe have had a few drinks inside you, or had a few drinks as a result of having an argument with somebody, and then knowing you need to deal with it, but the next morning feeling you haven't got the energy to deal with it and to apologise or to have the tough conversation you need to have because you just don't have the energy. You can't make your brain connect with the issue at hand. You can't think around it in a logical way to get the outcome you want. We really do we really are our worst enemies when we've got alcohol, because all we've done is manage to not only put off repairing a situation or dealing with a situation because we're drinking, but we've also made ourselves less able to deal with it overall because we're too tired to really connect. And so again, you need to begin to give yourself some time and space when you've been through an emotional situation. And I have to say, emotional stress is the thing that I found hardest to deal with since giving up drinking. And that's partly because I suspect what my emotional stress is has changed not long after giving up drinking. So I ended one relationship and started another. It created all sorts of emotional issues for me. And it created emotional stress for me because I really just don't know how to deal with these things. I have as an activist sort of personality, I want to deal with things immediately. I want to have results, but I've never learned how to deal with things and get results by thinking things through. I've only ever shot from the hip and hoped it landed okay. And often it never did. It never really did. And now I need to actually be more patient and take time to think through things, because actually just as much as alcohol can make things worse, not thinking through how you deal with the situation makes things worse. And it's a really hard and difficult skill set for me to acquire, both thinking before I open my gob, which is really, really difficult because I think as I speak. And so I can start a sentence with wanting to say one thing and end it with saying another, or start a sentence thinking I have a clear idea and have changed my mind by the end of the sentence, which isn't actually any good for the person that I'm having an argument with. So the emotional stress I find in dealing with emotional situations is even harder. And what I've had to learn to do, and this is something that's taken time and is still nowhere near perfect, but is to give myself time to learn and invest time in learning how I react to things. because how I react to things, it how I react to things is makes 100% difference to how that situation ends, how that turns out, and what happens in the long term. So my actions have consequences. Of course, they always had, but I didn't really care so much about them if I was drunk. But they all have consequences. So now I'm having to learn a whole new set of skills. I'm still really shit at it, but at least I now know I'm shit at it. I know what it is I need to learn, and I need to learn more about how I react to other people. I react to rejection really, really badly. So and it has happened occasionally, some people in Club Soda have messaged me privately saying how awful Club Soda is and how terrible the community is and they don't need it anymore and la 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 la. I can tell you that those messages that I get in the morning are the ones that make me sad and unhappy and angry for the whole of the day and want to give everything up. It completely affects how I feel about the whole day. And I've not even put any perspective on it, as Lucy says. So those people came and they got all the help they needed when they needed it, and they didn't have to pay for it, and now they don't need it anymore. They're moaning that they don't see as much as what's going on in the community, and so now they want to leave. Well, actually, that's a success in Club Soda terms. They don't need Club Soda anymore, so they're leaving. They just didn't have to leave by having a huff. And it's okay, because there are loads of other people who are really appreciating what's going on. But you would all have it. Somebody will say something to you at the school gates. You'll have an interaction with somebody when you first get into work. You'll have an email that comes in that's really badly worded. You'll see a post on Club Soda that you think is a bit loaded or a bit judgmental, and it will really make you angry for the whole of the day. But only you can change how you feel about that. You're in charge on how you react to that. And the way you react to that is not by drinking, not by getting in a huff, not by eating 5 bars of chocolate, which I may have done yesterday, maybe, but I didn't eat any today. See? It may be you need to be able to learn how to stop and think. And just like on those days that are just a little bit stressful, when you're feeling really emotional wrought, you actually also need to say to yourself, are the needs that I have currently being met? Can I drink some water? Can I eat some food? Can I take some time out and walk away from the situation for a little while and have a walk around the block? Can I shut my mouth and not say any more? Are all those options open to you? They probably are. Can you change your environment for a short while? Begin to think about what the needs are that you need to meet in order to deal with this situation in a more rational and sober way, literally in both senses of the word sober. And then you need to look at how you begin to build up those skills in the longer term to deal with emotional situations and to do some analysis and to use some logic. But the only thing that will help you deal with a situation is actually dealing with a situation. Drinking will only delay it and put it off. And it may be that you need to take some time out for yourself, and you do need to give yourself a treat, do a bit of self-care, make yourself feel better. But you are in charge of how you feel and how you react to situations. And you need to start learning that your immediate reaction isn't to go for a bottle, isn't to drink something. And so in the meantime, if you need to put something in the way of that, by knowing that if on, maybe once a week you have a little bit of a strop with your partner, then you need to work out what you put in place to deal with that strop. Because these things aren't often a surprise. They don't often, some of these things happen with regularity. You can begin to plan for them. What's your plan for when that happens? Are you going to take a deep breath? Are you going to remove yourself from the situation? Are you going to do a little bit of self-care and come back to it later? What are the words you're going to use to your partner to say, hang on, I think we need some time out at the minute in order to not make this situation worse? None of this is easy, but it all gets easier over time. All gets easier if you don't reach for a butt bottle as a default. And like I said, what we're trying to do is to undo some really, really long-term hard wiring where for every emotional situation we've ever had for the last 20 years, we have reacted by going for a drink, by drowning our sorrows, by extending and wallowing our self-pity, by having a drink. You have to recognise that bad days happen and everybody have them, and it is possible to get out of them. Because I suspect today your mood is different to what it was yesterday, and it'll be different to what it is tomorrow. So you can use Whoop to do your planning, as always. And I think if I was to talk about, so I talked to UC a bit today about dealing with stress over the next 5 weeks in the lead up to the big event that we're doing, like stupid people. And I was very non-committal in that discussion with him because that meant having to say some stuff out loud, but also because I actually haven't done the planning I need. I've done a little bit of planning. So I've realised that my wish is to work really hard to make this event work, but to not, but my outcome of that would be to have not done it by making other people feel really unhappy by being in my presence. That's really important to me and quite difficult as well, I know, when I'm stressed. So the obstacles that get in the way of that is that I want to work long days, and that if I eat badly, then I'm hungry, I'm even more of a bad mood. I will feel like I need to reward myself, but what I'll do is I'll reward myself with bad stuff, and so therefore I feel guilty. And I've got a tendency to want to just sit and hammer through, even if I'm not being very productive. I feel that sitting at the computer, I'm doing something, and I need to recognise those points in time and also walk away from the computer. And I also need to create some space for UC because we live together and work together, and therefore we need to create some space to make it work for both of us. So what's my plan? Well, I haven't finished my plan yet, but part of my plan is this today I was in work and I had my food for the week delivered. So rather than this strange thing I've been doing where I've been getting up and going to the gym in the morning and making UC carry all my food to work, which isn't really that fair, and then piling in big loads of food in order to have breakfast, lunch and dinner at work, I just ordered an Ocado delivery today. It's delivered my food for the week. I've planned my food. I've also put in loads of healthy treats into a cupboard so that whilst I feel I might eat more over the next 5 weeks, at least I'm going to try and keep it a bit balanced. So today I did a bit of that. I cleaned my desk space. I, made it feel a bit nicer and a bit more comfortable for me. And also, I want to get out of the home earlier because I want to create some space for UC and to make sure that I get some exercise, even if it's walking. So unlike last month where I beat Jill and I swam 44 kilometres in a month, I might not quite do that much this month. I'm not going to feel bad about it, but at least I'm going to get out the house, and getting out the house, I'll probably do some walk or do something. So that's at least the start of my plan. I now need to finish my plan, but it's a plan. Now you can do that for you. You can do that and go, right, I sometimes have a mood with my other half. And so how do I deal with that? What's my next plan of action? How am I going to reward myself? What am I going to do when I go to the fridge to reach for a bottle as a default response? What am I going to pick up instead? You can begin to plan for those events. None of us like to think we are moody. None of us like to think we have bad days. None of us like to think that we don't react well to things. But if we're really honest with ourselves, we do. And by being honest with ourselves, we'll be able to take the one thing out of the equation that's doing us the most damage, and that's alcohol. So this is no longer your default position. You need to plan some new defaults into place. And I can promise you, the more often you deal with those situations without resorting back to alcohol, the more likely you are to be able to break that pattern in the longer term and be able to keep alcohol-free for longer. Whether that means if you're moderating, you keep alcohol-free for 5-6 days of the week, or whether you're going completely alcohol-free, where you'll be able to deal with more and more with those situations, you will build your resilience. This is all about building your resilience for the longer term, creating new ways to cope and new strategies to deal with what is basically being normal. Okay, so I think that's all I've got to say, and I can't tell if you've asked any questions today, for which I apologise. But I may be able to rectify that in the near future. I hope that's worked okay, and I will speak to you all soon. Okay, bye.